This is time that we discuss the early 20th century literature. Actually, the early 20th century literature starts from 1901 because it was in 1901 Queen Victoria became dead. With the death of Queen Victoria, the Victorian period actually comes to its close. And there begins the early 20th century literature. And the early 20th century literature actually started from the Victorian itself. So the important writers of the early 20th century literature are found born in the late Victorian period. For example, Ruyard Kipling was born in 1865. Still Victorianism was there. And then Galsworthy, H.G. Wells, Joseph Conrad, E.M. Forster, and they are the popular novelists of the period. And they all were born in the Victorian era. And they continued in the early modern literature. And actually, early modern literature is basically influenced by the two world wars. The First World War that took place between 1914 and 18. And the Second World War between 1939 and 45. And in T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, we come to find the picture of the post-war Europe. And it is also pre-war Europe. The Second World War has not started, but the First World War was over. Wasteland was produced in 1922, and the Second World War took place only in 1939. And the age is also noted as Edwardian age. The end of Victorian is noted as Edwardian. And King Edward was the son of Queen Victoria, and he belonged to Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, another German dynasty. Queen Victoria was married to King Albert of the Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. So, after the death of Queen Victoria, her son Edward VII became the ruler, and he continued up to 1910, and he was followed by his son George. And the period of Edward is noted in literature as Edwardian era. And the period of George is also noted as Georgian era. King George was the son of King Edward VII. And actually he has changed the title Saxe-Coburg-Gotha into Windsor. King George is a king with some special importance. It was he who changed the name Saxe-Coburg-Gotha into Windsor Castle. And he was also the ruler of India at the time. India was under the control of the British Empire. And he came to attend the Delhi Darbar. King George attended the Delhi Darbar also. He presided the Delhi Darbar. And it was he who declared the shifting of the Indian capital from Calcutta to Delhi. And he is a noted British king, King George. And when we get into the Edwardian literature, we come to find that it is a romantic period with people spending their long summer evenings in the open air, basking in the sun, and the sun seemed never setting in the British Empire. And British Empire is often called an empire with no sun setting. And there was also a new development that started from France, which is called art nouveau or new art, a decorative style that started in France. And it flourished throughout Europe, including America. And then there was the rise of the new drama, started by Ibsen and followed by George Bernard Shaw. And the period is also noted for large number of novelists, like Ruyard Kipling, John Galsworthy, H.G. Wells, Joseph Conrad, E.M. Foster, and others. And in the early 20th century literature, we actually start with Ruyard Kipling. And there are a number of specialities connected with Ruyard Kipling. Kipling was born in India. It was in Bombay he was born. He was born in 1865. And Kipling is a famous novelist, poet and journalist. And there are very popular novels written by him like Kim. And he is also a writer of children's books. And he is very popular for his Jungle Book, the story of Mowgli, the man cub, living with the animals in the forest, Mowgli. And it has been a very popular children's story, a favorite children's story for all over the world. And his novel Kim is also very popular. According to Nirad C. Chowdhury, Kim is the novel that depicts the Indian life. The real Indian life is depicted in the novel Kim. And it was one question asked by UGC once. Nirad C. Chowdhury was a famous Indian writer who lived in England for a long time and became dead there. And he was a supporter of imperialism also, Nirad C. Chowdhury. And he is popular for his autobiography of an Unknown Indian. And after all, the autobiography impressed Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister then, and he gave order for the naturalization of Nirad C. Chowdhury, and Chowdhury became a professor in the Oxford University and continued to remain there until his death. That took place almost at the age of 100 years. He lived about 100 years, Nirad Chowdhury, a very popular Indian writer who supported the British imperialism. And he produced his autobiography entitled Autobiography of an Unknown Indian. And he presented a copy of the autobiography to Winston Churchill, and Churchill became impressed with his views on imperialism. And he gave order for the naturalization of Nirad Chowdhury. And Chowdhury produced a sequel to the autobiography also, and it is entitled Thy Hand, Great Anarch. And it is a very special title. The title has been taken from Pope's poem, Alexander Pope's poem, Dunciad. Pope's poem Dunciad ends with the lines, Thy hand, great anarch, let the curtain fall, and universal darkness buries all. Thy hand, great anarch. Actually, it refers to the hand of the British imperialist. And Nirad Chowdhury's autobiography of an Unknown Indian, was followed by its sequel. And the sequel was titled Thy Hand, Great Anarch. And according to Nirad Chowdhury, the best novel that depicts Indian situation written by an Englishman is Kim by Rudyard Kipling. He never considered E.M. Foster's novel Passage to India as the best novel depicting Indian situation. Actually, people may think that E.M. Foster's novel A Passage to India depicts Indian situation better than the Indian situation found in the novel by Rudyard Kipling entitled Kim. But Chowdhury was of the opinion that Kim was the only novel written by an Englishman that depicted a realistic picture of Indian situation, that depicted the true Indian situation. And it was one question asked by UGC about some 3 years before. And normally the students thought it was Passage to India referred to by Nirad Chowdhury, the best novel that depicts Indian situation. But actually Nirad Chowdhury famously admired Kim and maintained that Kim was the only English novel written by an Englishman depicting a realistic picture of Indian situation. And Rudyard Kipling, I told you, was born in Bombay. And he had always a likeness for Bombay. He had written a few lines on Bombay and included in his poem Homes and Haunts. In the poem Homes and Haunts, Rudyard Kipling speaks about his birth in Bombay and praises Bombay, saying, "Mother of cities to me, between the palm and the sea, where the world and steamers wait." And Bombay was a great place because the world and the steamers, the world as a whole, and the steamers in the sea, they all waited for Bombay. They all looked to Bombay with a very serious interest. They were all interested in Bombay. And it was in Bombay, the mother of cities. He was born, and according to him, it was in the glory of Bombay, the mother of cities, that he was born. He always liked Bombay. And he admired Bombay in one of his poems also. Chowdhury was a great appreciator of Rudyard Kipling. And Kipling especially known for his birth in India, because it was at the time his father, Lockwood Kipling, John Lockwood Kipling, working as principal and professor of the J.J. School of Arts in Bombay. His father was a painter and a professor of art, and he was then the professor and principal of the J.J. School of Arts, a very popular institution, Indian institution that is situated in Bombay. And Kipling was born in Bombay. And he was named Rudyard Kipling, very interestingly, because his father and mother met at Rudyard, a place called Rudyard in Staffordshire. The father and the mother met for the first time in a place called Rudyard. And when the son was born, they named him Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling spent his early days in Bombay and after all went to England and completed his studies and returned to Lahore, because by the time his father became the principal and director of Lahore Museum, Kipling came and joined with the newspapers and magazines in Lahore and Allahabad. He joined with a newspaper called the Civil and Military Gazette, and he considered the newspaper as the mistress and the most true love. He considered the newspaper as his mistress, so unwedded wife, and the most true love. Even though it was the mistress, it was the most true love. He considered the newspaper, the Civil and Military Gazette, as the mistress and most true love. And he worked in the newspaper as assistant editor. Then he joined with the Pioneer that is published from Allahabad. And Pioneer is a magazine that still continues. And Rudyard Kipling was appointed as the assistant editor of this magazine, the Pioneer, that was published from Allahabad. And after spending a few years in India, again he returned to England and started a literary career by writing essays and novels. And he became a friend of Henry James also. Henry James was the one who started literary realism. And we have discussed Henry James earlier. Rudyard Kipling came out with his novels like The Light That Failed and Now Laka. These are the two novels written by Rudyard Kipling in his early career. He wrote The Light That Failed when he was only 26 years of age. And this novel tells the story of a painter named Dick Heldar. And he was about to be made blind, and he was found painting his masterpiece. When he finishes the masterpiece, he becomes totally blind. And he lost his love also. He was in love with a playmate named Macy, and it became a miserable affair. And the other novel produced by Ruyard Kipling was entitled The Naulaka. Naulaka actually a Hindi tale. It means 9 lakhs. Now means 9, and Naulaka means 9 lakhs. So, and these novels didn't become successful, but the title Naulaka became a great impression for Rudyard Kipling. Kipling always loved the title Naulaka, and when he built a house, he named it as Naulaka. And when he wrote Naulaka, he had also a friend with him joining for the composition, and he was named Walcott Ballister. So the novel was co-authored with a friend named Walcott Ballister. So it was in 1894 he came out with his great and popular book, The Jungle Book. It was produced in 1894, telling the story of a man cub called Mowgli. And he is an abandoned boy and protected by the wolves in the jungle. He was an abandoned boy. His parents abandoned him. And he was brought up by the wolves in the jungle. And there are very interesting animal characters like Shere Khan, a tiger, and Balu, a bear, and Bagheera, a black panther, and there was also Ka, K-A-A, a python. And there are many interesting animal characters also found in the children's story. And this children's story actually made Rudyard Kipling very popular. Kipling also produced other children's works like Ricki, Ticki, Tavi. And this one actually tells the story of a mongoose. The story of a mongoose told in Ricki, Ticki, Tavi. The mongoose identified the evil plot of 2 cobras, and he defeated the cobras. The cobras wanted to bite the owner of the house. And when the mongoose identified the secret of the cobras, he fought with the cobras and defeated them. And the story, Ricki, Ticki, Tavi. And there was also another children's book called Tumai of the elephants. Tumai was only a 10-year-old boy. His father was a mahout, but could not manage an elephant. And Tumai, the 10-year-old boy, made friendship with the elephant and became able to manage the elephant. And all the people became surprised to find the young boy Tumai managing the elephants. And Rudyard Kipling also produced the second Jungle Book when he was in America. And he also produced a collection of children's stories called Just So Stories. It was in 1902 he produced a collection of stories called Just So Stories. And these are the stories telling the special things about animals, how the camel got its hump on its back. And these are the special things discussed in these stories, and they are titled Just So Stories. And he also produced another children's book called Puck of Pook's Hill. And Puck is a very popular character in Shakespeare's play Midsummer Night's Dream. Puck is a very popular character in Shakespeare's play Midsummer Night's Dream. And he prepares a juice and puts the juice on the eyes of people, on the eyelids of people, and making the people fall in love with the first thing that they see after their waking up. So they fall in love with the first one or the first thing that they see after waking up. And a special kind of juice was made by Puck, and Puck plays a very interesting role in the play A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. And the same Puck has been used by Ruyard Kipling for telling his stories. And the title of the collection is called Puck of Pook's Hill. And the question why Rudyard Kipling wrote all these stories was that he used to tell his daughter many number of stories. He had a daughter named Josephine, and she was interested in hearing stories, and Kipling used to tell her many number of stories. And the girl became dead when she was only 6 years of age. She was affected by pneumonia and she became dead. Even after the death of the girl, Kipling continued to tell interesting stories for the children. And he is popular for his books like The Jungle Book, and then Ricki, Ticki, Tavi, Chumoy and the Elephants, Chumoy of the Elephants. And he also produced the second Jungle Book and a collection of stories called Just So Stories, and then the very popular collection called Puck of Pook's Hill. And it was at the same time he came out with his novel Kim. Kim was produced by him in 1901. And it was serialized in a magazine called McClure's magazine. The book was produced in 1901. So it was in that year Queen Victoria became dead. Rudyard Kipling's novel Kim came out in the same year. And the story is set against the background of the great game that took place in countries like India. The game between the Russian spies and the British spies. There were many number of spies working for these empires. These great countries like Russia and Britain, and there were the foul plays taking place in the colonial countries. And it is called The Great Game, and this novel is set against the background of The Great Game. And this is also one question asked by UGC once. The novel Kim is set against the background of the Great Game between Soviet Russia and Britain. And the novel is specially noted for its portrayal of its people, the culture of the Indian people, their varied religions and their traditions. The novel is specially noted for picturing the Indian life, and it was greatly admired by